All right, go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. Am I online? On air? Okay.
Yes.
So good morning to all of you. Good afternoon. It's now 6:30 p.m. in Sevilla, in Spain, where I live. And I am going to give you a presentation about the Jews of Spain. Jews came here 2,000 years ago, and we are still here with parentheses of 500 years when we were kicked out in the 15th century. So I will go over all these years until recent times, and then, okay, hold on for a second. It may be my mother. See? See? Sí. Vale, estoy en una conferencia, mamá. You see, it was my mother calling. I told her not to call today, but she did. Anyway, so I was saying that I will be telling you a bit about what was Jewish life here during the Middle Ages and how's Jewish life here nowadays. I have a presentation with slides, and I have included some little videos. So it's like we will be doing a virtual tour throughout Sevilla, which is my hometown. And a little bit of myself. I was born here in Sevilla in 1967. My parents were born in Morocco, and they moved into Spain in the 60s, in the late 50s. Both of them coming from different towns. Went to study in Madrid at the university, and that's where they met. And then my father was offered the job in a brewery here in Sevilla, and this is how I ended up being born in Sevilla. So when my father arrived in the city in the 60s, in 1964 actually, he found that there were already like 12 to 15 Jewish families living here, and he managed to organize them in a small community and officially created the Israeli community of Sevilla. But we'll talk about this at the very end. I am the second of 4 siblings. I have an older sister. She currently lives in Israel. She moved to Israel when she was very young. She was only 14. And she decided to make Aliyah to Israel, and she's still there. And then I have 2 more brothers here in Spain. One lives in Sevilla, and the other one lives in Madrid. I have a degree in law, so I'm currently an attorney. However, I never practiced as an attorney. I got my degree, actually practiced for 3 months, and I realized that I didn't like it, so I decided to do something different, and I ended up becoming an educator. I provide Jewish tours here in Sevilla and other Spanish towns, and I also lecture at the university here on Holocaust studies and anti-Semitism. Okay, so just let me share my screen with you, and 1 second. Compartir. Okay, so I decided to call my presentation Jews of Spain, the Jews, actually the Jewish, past, present, and future. So the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, when did the Jews arrive in Spain, in the Iberian Peninsula? And this happened by the end of the 2nd century. The Romans were here, so Hispania, which was the name of the area, was dominated by the Romans, and this is when Jews are found here in the Iberian Peninsula. After the Romans, Spain was invaded by the barbarians coming from Germany. So this happened in the 5th century. So until the 5th century, the Romans were here. Then the Romans were replaced by the barbarians in the 5th century. And then at the 8th century, the barbarians, the Visigoths, were replaced by the Muslims. The Muslims came from North Africa and they invaded at the beginning of the 8th century in the year 711. It's very easy to remember. And these are some elements, some items that have been found that actually prove the presence of Jews in the Iberian Peninsula since then. The first one is a tombstone. It's actually a tombstone from a girl. We know it's from a girl, and the name was Ania Salomonula. I mean, some pieces are missing, but still we can guess that the name would be Ania Salomonula, and she was 1 year, and it means year in Latin, the number 1, and then 4 months, mens is 4 months, and then at the bottom it mentions the word Jewish. So we know that by the end of the beginning of the 3rd century, around the year 200, 220, 240, there were some Jewish communities settled down in Spain. The piece on the right is also a tombstone, and this tombstone is also written in Latin, and in this case, it doesn't say that the person that was buried, Justinus, was Jewish. The only element that we have is that he was born in Shechem. Shechem is in what today is called part of the West Bank, is the city of Nablus. This is how they call it today. In Hebrew would be the city of Shechem. And this person that died in Spain and whose tomb was found here in Spain, that person was born in what was called by then Palestine. We don't know, it doesn't say that he was Jewish, but he was born there. And
how I'm going to do it? I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
It's very easy.
Okay, and then the third piece we have here is a sink, and it has 3 elements and inscriptions. We don't see, but there are some Hebrew letters here at the bottom and a menorah. And then at the other side, there is a Latin and a Greek inscription. So actually, it's got 3 inscriptions in Greek, in Latin, and in Hebrew. And this was dated to the 4th century. So this is the moment of Jewish presence, organized Jewish presence in the Iberian Peninsula, in what is called today Spain. And this is a map. This is a map of Spain. As you can see, Africa at the very bottom, it's very close. Actually, the distance is only 8 miles at the shortest point. Okay, so Muslims in the year 711, in the 8th century, they came. Muslims, Islam as a religion started in the Arabian Peninsula, okay, and Islam spread out towards east and towards west, all from the north of Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and in what today is Morocco. And once they got at the very north of Africa, they jumped in and they managed to capture Spain. And actually, this invasion was very fast. In only 7 years, the Muslims that started here at the very bottom, they managed to go all the way up until they reach almost the ocean again. So the Christians, the Visigoths that they were here, they only managed to maintain control of this little area, this strip here in the north, while Muslims occupied the entire land. And then over the years, the Christians started to fight back because they wanted to eliminate Muslim presence in Spain. So the difference is that while the invasion and the occupation of the entire Iberian Peninsula lasted for only 7 years, so 711 at the very bottom, 718 at the top, it took the Christians 800 years to recover the entire Iberian Peninsula in different moments. So I have here some maps. The first map, every time in these maps you see green color means Islam, while the other colors, yellow and red, is Christian. So at the very beginning, everything is green, it's controlled by the Muslims. 100 years later, the Christians managed to capture some of the territory. As the years went by, 300 years later, half of the territory is controlled by the Christians and the other half is actually controlled by the Muslims. By the 13th century, you see that Islam is shrinking, so the green part is smaller, while the other is growing bigger in different kingdoms. It was not a homogeneous kingdom. And the end is 1492. 1492, it's a very important year. Why? 3 reasons. 1492, the last stronghold, Granada, surrendered to the Christians. So 8 years after the Muslims started, they are defeated in the Iberian Peninsula. So Granada surrendered to the Christians in 1492. Also, the Jews were kicked out of Spain. That's in year 1492 in March. And by October of 1492, Christopher Columbus reached the New World. He thought that he had arrived to the West Indies. However, he just found a whole new continent in between. And this is a map of Spain in the year approximately 1300s. So by the 1300s, you can see that these are cities, villages with Jewish presence. As you can see, there were Jews all around the Iberian Peninsula. At some point, some cities had a bigger community and they had more than one synagogue, and some other places they have just one synagogue. And as you can see, there were Jews all the way around Hispania. However, they never were bigger than 5, 6, 7% of the population. I mean, I know it's quite big. I mean, we compare this number to the figures today in the United States, for example. The United States, the Jewish population is about 1.9 to 2%. And in Spain, we're talking about 5, 6% at a certain time. So it's a significant number. It's not a large majority, but 5, 6% is quite a big population. And these are some pictures that I've decided to share with you of places that have been found in Spain regarding its Jewish heritage. So the first place that was excavated, this was excavated in the 1960s. This is a mikveh. This mikveh happens to be in the north of Spain. In 1964, it was discovered and it was documented that it was a mikveh. The picture on the right is a cemetery, and this cemetery is the last one to be excavated. This was found only about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, in a city in the south of Spain, when they were building a new road to make a circumvallation of the city, a cemetery was found. The cemetery had over 300 graves, and it was a Jewish cemetery. All the bones were reburied over there. At some point, some of the bodies were in really bad conditions and very small pieces of bones. And the area still today can be seen as a cemetery. And as I said, this was found only 10 years ago. Still, at some point, Spain is a country with many layers of history. So every time you dig, you find something. And then the other pictures are Barcelona. There is an inscription in the wall, and Girona. Girona is also north of Spain. Well, probably you've heard about what we call the golden age of Spanish Judaism. For many years, Spain, especially under the control of the Muslims, was the cradle of many scholars. Scholars like Hashdai ibn Shaprut, or Shmuel ibn Nagrela, or Shlomo ibn Gabirol, or Itzhak al-Fasi, Yehuda Halevi, all of them were born in what it was considered Muslim Spain. Remember, if we go back, we are talking now, all these scholars are from this period, the 1100s, and they were all of them born and lived among the Muslims, okay? And they actually succeeded, and some of them became politicians and at some point even ministers to the caliph, to the rulers, and also they were very much involved into art and literature and medicine and poetry, philosophy. All this this knowledge was brought to Muslim Spain at some point by the Jews. Probably the most famous one is the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, Maimonides. He was born in the 12th century, in the year 1135, in the city of Cordoba. Cordoba, which had been a couple of hundred years before he was born, Cordoba was probably the most important city in the Western world. It was a huge city, and it was also the cradle of many scholars. One of them is Maimonides, the Ramban. However, Maimonides didn't live in Cordoba for a very long time. He had to move, and he had to emigrate, and he went first to North Africa, to Morocco, and then he settled down in Egypt after spending a short amount of time in the land of Israel. So all his work was done not in Spain, it was done while he was living in Egypt. He was very well known for his works in philosophy, in medicine, in astronomy, and even he wrote some rabbinical works, which are very well known, like the Mishneh Torah from the Rambam is probably one of the most important texts for the Jews. Philosophy, he is the author of Moreh Nebuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, which is quite a difficult text to understand, because in this text he tries to combine faith and reason. So at some point it was by then complicated to melt philosophy and religion, and this is what he do. His positions were very much, he was a follower of Aristophanes, and he is he's the scholar that introduced Aristotelian thinking in Judaism, and for this reason he was not very good accepted by the more Orthodox Jews by then. So today Maimonides is probably the best known scholar, but 800 years ago he was not so popular among the Jews, and even in southern France, 100 years after he passed away, his books were burned by some rabbis because they did not accept his points of view in between faith and religion. These are some pictures of the synagogue in the city of Cordoba. Cordoba, as I said, there was a time where the city of Cordoba was the most important city in the Western world. Cordoba is at the very south of Spain, and it was the capital of the caliphate. So the caliph lived in Cordoba, had his palace in Cordoba, and there was a large Jewish population there. According to the records, there were between 10 to 15 synagogues. Unfortunately, only one of them remains today. It's a very, very small one. So this is clearly not the most important synagogue, but this is the only one that we have, that it is left today. The synagogue, it was built according to the inscription, which is this plaque here, which is here in the wall. The synagogue dates to 1315. So in the 14th century, there was already such a beautiful synagogue with all these motifs. And the walls are pretty much with some text from Tehillim. There are many psalms written here and in the walls, in the four walls of the synagogue. Probably in the picture here at the very bottom, you can see at some point there are some Hebrew letters. These are parts of the book of Tehillim. Okay, and this is the entrance to this a little patio, and then the entrance to the synagogue. And now we go to Toledo. Toledo is the other city where Jews actually flourished. And this is one of the two remaining synagogues in the city of Toledo. So nowadays, today, 21st century, there are only 3 remaining synagogues in Spain. 2 of them are in Toledo, 1 of them is in Cordoba. So this would be the first synagogue in Toledo. As you can see, is very similar, very much the same style as the one in Cordoba. Both of them are actually from the same century, the 14th century. And again, you can see a lot of Hebrew text written all the way around. At this point, this is a psalm that goes all the way around and still can be seen. Today, this synagogue is no longer a synagogue, it's a museum. It's actually the Sephardic Museum of Spain, which is in Toledo, and this synagogue. And this is the other synagogue of Toledo. It's called the Synagogue of Santa Maria la Blanca, Saint Mary the White. I know that for a synagogue is not a proper name, right? But after being a synagogue, it was taken by the Christians and it became a church. So they gave the name of Iglesia de Santa Maria la Blanca, Church of Santa Maria la Blanca. And this was a church for many, many years until it was discovered that before being a church, it had been a synagogue. And that's why today people refer to this place as the Synagogue of Santa Maria la Blanca. We don't know what was the name of the synagogue when it was a synagogue. We know the name of the person that paid to be built, which was a person called Ibn Shoshan. So among the Jews, sometimes this is referred as the Synagogue of Ibn Shoshan, but for everyone is the Synagogue of Santa Maria la Blanca. And now we travel south of Toledo to the city of Sevilla. Sevilla is actually the city where I live. And Sevilla had the second largest population, Jewish population in Spain in the 14th century. The estimation is that around 450 Jewish families lived in Sevilla by then. 450 families, it's approximately between 2,000 and 2,500 Jews. Perhaps it doesn't look too big, but you have to consider that total population of the city of Sevilla by then, it was no more than 28, perhaps 30,000. So 2,500 out of 28,000, it's almost a 10% of the population of the city. So between 8 and 10% of the population of Sevilla in the year 1340 were Jews. And they lived in an area which was called the Jewish quarter, the Juderia Jewish quarter, which was on one side of the city. So if you go to the bigger map, the old town of Sevilla was surrounded by a wall, a medieval wall, just for defensive purposes. And inside the city, there was a separated area, which was known as the Jewish quarter, okay? Which is here, we go to the map on the right, I marked it in red. So the red line is a wall. So actually this line above is part of the city wall, which was at the same time part of the wall that surrounded the Jewish quarter, while the other line, it's an inner wall. So this wall goes inside the city, separating what it was the Jewish quarter and down here, which is the rest of the city. And here I wrote Alcázar. Alcázar is the royal palace. So actually the Jews were, normally they tried to settle down next to the palace. They were searching for the protection of the king, and that's why any city that we do go, we will find the Jewish quarter, the Juderia, next to the palace or where royal power lies. And here, the picture on the left, this picture was taken about a year ago. We were in lockdown by then when COVID started, and one of the streets within the Jewish quarter was excavated, and the wall, the inner wall, was found. It was known that it was somewhere down there. So this wall is actually, if you follow my mouse, is here. Here is where last year when they dug to put some new pipes for water, the water system, they found part of the wall. And I just decided to walk with all of you a little bit down that street. The video is from 2 weeks ago. As you can see, it has been the same street. It has been covered up again. So now that's a road. But if all these stones were removed, you would see what is on the left. And this was something very remarkable, because I myself thought that they would leave glass at some point where you could see the wall, but unfortunately it couldn't be. So this is exactly the same moment, the same position. As you can see, the wall, which is the foundations of the wall actually. So in the video, everything to the right would be the Jewish quarter, while everything to the left is outside the wall, therefore outside the Jewish quarter. Okay, here we go now to the church of Santa Maria la Blanca. Santa Maria la Blanca, the same name as the synagogue in Cordoba, if you remember, in Toledo, if you remember. Santa Maria la Blanca in Sevilla, it's quite a remarkable building because today it's a church. Before being a church, it was a synagogue. And before being a synagogue, it had been a mosque. Don't forget that Spain, there was a time that was under Muslim control and they had many mosques. So when the Christians took over the city of Sevilla, they took all the mosques that existed in Sevilla and started to use them as churches. However, 3 of those mosques were handed to the Jewish population of the city, and the Jews started to use those places as synagogues. In the 15th century, when the expulsion took place, the synagogues were turned into churches. So this building, remember, first it was a mosque, then it became a synagogue, and finally it became a church. What we see today, it's the renovated building from the 17th century. And a few years ago, the building needed to be renovated. And some of the paintings, this painting here, it's a canvas, okay? And it was removed, not to preserve it. And right behind the canvas, this part was found. And this, according to the archaeologists, what we see here is part of the original structure of the synagogue. So in a diagram at the bottom, you can see here this structure. We see here like one window, a second window, a third window, a fourth window, all the way around. And these are all these windows here. So the building was something like the building down here. Okay, so let's walk. And before walking into the church, I want to show you that also at some point, this structure here was found next to the altarpiece. And this is where the Torah scrolls were. So this is the Aron HaKodesh of the synagogue, which was also found at the same time in 2012, only 8-9 years ago. Today, this the Aron HaKodesh has been covered up with this piece of wood, but it's still back there. So let's walk into the church of Santa Maria Blanca and let's see what is today, what we could see today. So we walk in, and this is, remember, the building, not what it looks today. It was the synagogue. The synagogue looked different. This is a renovation during the 17th century. So all this plaster, all this decoration dates back only to the 17th century. So the synagogue didn't look like this. It's just the structure of the building with the arches and the columns, but not the decoration. So as I mentioned, when this painting, on top, let's walk a little bit further and then I will return back. And when this painting was removed, this is what was found. If you see the little windows of the synagogue. And as I mentioned, here on the right side is where the Haron HaKodesh was. This is actually, this corner is oriented towards east, towards Jerusalem, okay? So this is what is right behind that. So again, you see the painting. If this canvas could be removed today, we would see part of the structure of the synagogue that it's behind. And also behind all this plaster that you see, this beautiful Baroque plaster, we would find some of the remains of the dome of the synagogue. And as I mentioned, this building was a mosque before, and at the same time, when the archaeologists started to work in the building, they found also remains of the mosque. So now we are moving out to one of the sides of the building. Okay, there is a patio. This patio has been recently renovated. And here we see where the entrance to the mosque was. So this is an arch. This is an arch. Okay, and this is the original entrance to the mosque. Okay, so this wall was just painted in white, and it was only 8 years ago when this was discovered. So all these stones date back actually to the times where the building was a mosque and not a synagogue, and definitely not a church. The Inquisition was created in the city of Sevilla, and we have an area where we find the headquarters of the Inquisition. Still, this picture, it's a modern picture. So the street next to the building is still known as Callejón de la Inquisición, the Inquisition Alley. And this picture is the excavations underneath. So here I did the same. I just walked in, where you can see these walls are the walls of the headquarters of the Inquisition. So there was an Inquisition in Spain for 350 years, and the task of the Inquisition was to persecute those Christians that had been Jews before and still kept practicing Judaism in secret. So the Inquisition, the task of the Inquisition is to find out who is technically a Christian, but still practices Judaism in secret, and persecute them, try them, and if found guilty, to be burned on the stake. So all these ruins that we are seeing now are part of the headquarters, the dungeons of the Inquisition. Today, the building on top of this, because this is the underground part, on top of it, there is a market. There is a food market. And this was excavated perhaps 8-10 years ago. And the authorities of the city decided to show the ruins of the Inquisition headquarters. As I said, Inquisition lasted in Spain over 350 years. So it was created in 1478, 14 years before the expulsion, and it was not abolished until 1834. So still in the beginning of the 19th century, the Inquisition was functioning here and still was accusing people of being heretics, and if they were found guilty, would be burned on the stake. Okay, the last burning of the Inquisition in Spain, in Sevilla, was in the year 1783. In 1783, a lady, Maria Dolores Lopez, she was burned. Actually, she was accused not of being a Jew, but being a witch. Okay, so the Inquisition persecuted not only those conversos from Judaism, they only persecuted other faiths like Islam or Anglicans.
I thought you're talking to him.
Yeah, I did. No, I was talking to my friend.
Or Protestants, or whoever was not a straight Roman Catholic could be persecuted by the Inquisition. They were considered heretics, and therefore they could be burned on the stake. Okay, so as I said, it lasted for 350 years. There was an Inquisition in Spain, and Sevilla happens to have the first court of the Inquisition. So the first trials happened in the city of Sevilla in 1481, 11 years before the final expulsion that took place in 1492. And so these are the, as I said, the dungeons of the Inquisition in the city of Sevilla. Okay, and just to finish with, this is outside the Jewish quarter. Okay, if you remember the picture that we saw at the beginning, the city of Sevilla, and this would be outside of the city. Let me go back to show you in the map here. Okay, so now we've walked all through the Jewish quarter, and right now we are somewhere around here. Okay, outside of the city, somewhere around here in this map. So we are outside of the city and also outside of the Jewish quarter. And what do we find? Okay. So if you follow me, now we go down the stairs. Remember, we are outside of the city of Sevilla. We are in the outskirts. We just crossed we went out through the gate and we are coming outside. And when we go down, we find ourselves in a parking lot. Okay, this is a garage. Remember, we are underneath, we are underground. Okay, and you probably, I'm sure that you are very much surprised that we are walking into a garage, into a parking. Well, let's go and see what's behind these cars. This is what I wanted to show you. This is a Jewish cemetery. This parking was built over the remains of the Jewish cemetery from the 12th century. So actually 192 graves were found in this spot 23 years ago in 1997. You can see in this picture some of the tombs, some of the graves. Unfortunately, nobody cared at that time. They thought that the park in the garage was much more important than a Jewish cemetery, and everything was removed except one. There is just one grave that is back, and this is the grave you can see here. There is no one inside. The bones that were found here, those bones were taken to the Archeological Museum of Sevilla, which still are there. But so there is no remains at this point, but just a tomb that marks the site of the Jewish cemetery of Sevilla. So this is a picture that I took one day that there was no car. And these are some pictures that were taken during the excavations. So as you can see, in some of the tombs, there were like full skeletons, and all of these were Jews. This is the copy of the decree of expulsion. Jews were kicked out of Spain in 1492 after being here for over 1,200 years. Eventually, they were kicked out of Spain. Why? Because they were Jews. The Catholic monarchs, Isabel and Ferdinand, they wanted to have a unified country, and they managed to capture the last stronghold from the Muslims, the Kingdom of Granada, that until then was a Muslim kingdom. And then after the political union, it came the religious union. So first the Jews were kicked out. Muslims were not at the first stage, but eventually 100 years later, the Muslims were kicked out of Spain. And sorry, yeah. For those of you that have been in Spain, this is Alhambra of Granada, and this is where the decree of expulsion was signed. So that's why I brought the picture of the beautiful Alhambra Palace. This is a Muslim palace built by the Muslims. So when the city became Christian, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel settled down in this palace. So that's why 3 months after Granada surrendered, the Catholic monarchs, they signed the decree of expulsion in this room. This is the room. This was the throned room where the decree of expulsion was signed. And here I just highlight some of the text. Some wicked Christians who Judaized, so they refer to those Jews that had converted to Christianity, but they still practice Judaism in secret. And for them, that was a crime. That's what it says here. The said Jews who have been most guilty of the said crimes. Therefore, they resolved to order that the Jews and the Jewesses of their kingdoms to depart and never to return. This was the reason for the expulsion of Jews of Spain. They were, even though some of them had converted to Christianity, they never were accepted, and eventually they were kicked out. And this is a map of the different paths that these Jews took. Some of them went east, some others went west to Portugal, and some others went north. And some others went south to North Africa. To be honest, the only ones that were better treated are the ones that went to the Ottoman Empire, the ones that ended in Turkey. The Turkish Sultan accepted the Jews. The ones that went to Portugal, they made a big mistake because they were kicked out from Portugal 4 years later. So if in 1492 there is an expulsion of Spain, the Jews that from Spain went to Portugal, they were kicked out 4 years later. And some of them went to the north of Europe, to the Netherlands, and from there they went to the West Indies. This is what some notes of the return back of Spain Jews. As I said, the abolition of the Inquisition was in 1834. The arrival of the Jews to Sevilla was in 1861. 160 years ago, the first Jews started to return back to the city of Sevilla. And then the first synagogue is open in Sevilla in 1914. 3 years later, there's a synagogue in Madrid, and 1 year later in Barcelona. During World War II, some Spanish diplomats helped Jews that were escaping from Europe. Remember that Spain was neutral during World War II. Spain did not participate. Franco kind of supported the Germans. He was a much better friend of the Germans than of the Allies, but officially Spain never joined World War II. And the truth is that some Spanish diplomats helped Jews to escape from Europe. It's only in 1967 when a law for freedom of religion was published in Spain. And 2 years later, in 1969, the decree of expulsion is officially abolished. Only, as you can see, almost 500 years after. In 1992, when the 500th anniversary of the expulsion, the King of Spain, Juan Carlos, he visited the synagogue in Madrid as an official visit to ask for forgiveness, to apologize for the expulsion of the Jews that had happened 500 years before. And in 2008 is the first public celebration of Hanukkah in the streets of Madrid, something similar to what happens nowadays in the United States, which is mostly organized by Chabad. They do it all throughout the world. In Spain, 13 years ago was the first public celebration of Hanukkah. And in 2015, a new law was passed on offering Spanish citizenship to Sephardic Jews. Anyone that can prove that has got Jewish, Sephardic, not Jewish, Sephardic ancestry can apply for Spanish citizenship. Actually, the law is over since October 2019. So no applications are being accepted now. For 4 years, between 2015 and 2019, it was the time for sending the applications. This is a picture of the cemetery. This is the current cemetery of Sevilla, the Jewish cemetery that goes back to 1882. Remember, the Jews have arrived in the city of Sevilla back in the 1860s. Actually, Sevilla has the first Jewish community after the expulsion, and the tomb on the right is actually the oldest tomb that dates back to the year 1882. And these are pictures of current synagogues in Spain. So this one is the synagogue of Sevilla. We have a small synagogue in Sevilla. Actually, this man here on the left, it's me, okay? And we have a small community in Sevilla with the synagogue. This one is from Marbella. Marbella lies in the coast, for those that have been in Spain. It's called Costa del Sol. This is the southern coast of Spain, and this is where the city of Marbella is. And this is the city of Malaga, the synagogue of the city of Malaga. This is the synagogue in Barcelona. Barcelona and Madrid are the only two cities in Spain where a building that is a synagogue. In the other three cases, Marbella, Sevilla, and Malaga, there are just a flat. Okay, so Barcelona is the whole building, is the synagogue, as well as in Madrid. In Madrid is the same. This is the building that contains the synagogue, and this is the synagogue where you can see the balcony for the women. And this is a picture of the synagogue of Madrid. And this is it. So this is the presentation. Let me tell you a few things about current Jewish Spain. Nowadays, there are approximately 30 to 35,000 Jews in Spain. The official numbers are a little bit bigger. The government says that there are around 45,000 Jews in Spain. That's not very real. Numbers are a little bit lower, around between 30 and 35,000. Most of them are originally from Morocco. Okay, so most of the Jewish community of Spain it's got Moroccan origins, like me. Sevilla has got a small synagogue, and there are approximately 25 to 30 families, Jewish families living in Sevilla. So that's about 110, 120, 130 people. So the main communities happen to be in Madrid and Barcelona. Each one has around 6,000, perhaps 7,000 people. And then small communities in Costa del Sol, as I mentioned before, Malaga and Marbella, and a city between Torremolinos. And then in Valencia, which is in the east, there is also a small Jewish community, and another community in the Balearic Islands with around 50 to 60 families there. And in the Canary Island, there are also like 50, 60, 80 families. So total number of Jews in Spain, as I said before, 30,000. There is a Jewish school in Madrid, and there is a Jewish school in Barcelona. That's it. No more Jewish schools in Spain. And for example, kosher grocery stores only in Madrid, in Barcelona, and in Malaga. Malaga and in Marbella, in the coast, there are also, but not in Sevilla. So for those of us that keep kosher, we have to bring our meat from either Malaga or Madrid or anywhere else. So this is current Jewish life in Spain. It's not growing, unfortunately. And the numbers do maintain, as I said before, in like 30,000 would be a fair number. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, either about the presentation or about any other Jewish aspect that you want to know.
If anybody has any questions, please, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead, Meir. Yeah.
I have a question. My parents' ketubah says that they were the Megurashim from Castilla. Where is Castilla?
Okay, Castilla. So let me go. No, here.
Yes,
Let me go back
perfect.
to the maps. Okay, Castilla. Castilla started as a small kingdom around here. So the Christian part started as different kingdoms, okay, different, and they were merging to each other as the years went by. So in the 13th century, you see there is a kingdom of Castilla, which is this one here, and then Castilla merged with Leon, which was a different kingdom, and then this kingdom of Castilla and Leon merged with Asturias and Galicia. They became part of the kingdom of Castilla, okay? So by the 15th century, Castilla occupies most of the Iberian Peninsula. So when Granada was defeated, so at this point, in this moment, there are 5 different kingdoms in Granada. Granada, in Spain, sorry. Granada, which is Muslim, and the other 4 kingdoms, Castilla and Aragon and Navarra and Portugal, are Catholic. And the Queen of Castilla, Isabel, she married to Ferdinand, that is the King of Aragon. And this is when Spain became Spain, when these 2 kingdoms merged, because Catholic monarchs she was Queen of Castilla and Ferdinand was King of Aragon. And then 6 years later, Navarra joined that union. And then the Catholic monarchs, Isabel from Castilla and Ferdinand from Aragon, they sent their daughter, one of them, to marry with the King of Portugal. Why? Because they wanted Portugal also to be part of the new monarchy, which is Spain. She married with him, but then actually, I think she died. Okay, and that's why Portugal remained as an independent kingdom. During the Middle Ages, all these marriages between king and queens were for political reasons, not for love. So, as I mentioned, the daughter of Isabel of Castilla and Ferdinand of Aragon, the daughters goes and marry the King of Portugal, but another daughter, Catherine, she married the King of England. Right, Catherine of Aragon is actually one of the first wife of Henry VIII. Why? Because this was the idea, making alliances. So the alliances were made with the children. Okay, so Castilla eventually started as a small kingdom somewhere around here, and it expanded and it merged with other kingdoms. And by 1492, Castilla covers like 2/3 of the Iberian Peninsula.
What major cities are in Castilla?
Okay, Madrid. Madrid is in Castilla, which is here in the center. Toledo is by the river. Sevilla is around here. Cordoba is somewhere around here. These are the main cities in Castilla. Then Barcelona is in Aragon. Barcelona today is part of Spain, but in ancient times, Barcelona was not part of the Kingdom of Castilla, but part of Aragon. And the legislation was different. So in the 14th century, the legislation in Castilla and Aragon was different. And even at some point, there were wars between these different Christian kingdoms. So all these 800 years of Muslim presence in the Iberian Peninsula, don't think that Muslims in the south would be fighting against the Christians in the north and opposite. No, most of the times there were internal fights and the alliances would change all the time. For example, in the 14th century, the situation was already more or less like this. There was a king in Castilla, King Pedro the Cruel, and he started a war with the Kingdom of Aragon. And during that war, so both kings are Christians. King of Castilla is a Christian king, and King of Aragon is a Christian king. And they started a war. And the Sultan of Granada, who was a good friend of King Pedro of Castilla, he actually supported him during this war. So he made an alliance to defeat a different Christian kingdom. Okay, so this is the situation for hundreds of years in the Iberian Peninsula. So not all the time the Christians fought against the Muslims. No, most of the time there were internal fights with the help of the other. It's pretty much like what it happens today. If you remember, 42 years ago, to be precise, Israel had a good relationship with Iran, with the Shah. Okay, today is Israel's worst enemies, but 42 years ago they were friends, right? And there were flights between Tehran and Tel Aviv. So the alliances are depending on who is the best friend or one of the friends of Israel today. Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they hate the Iranians. It's not because they love the Israelis. So you see, the enemy of my enemy can be my friend as long as I need him. Think the same idea, go back 1,000 years. The alliances were depending on the interest of each other. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. More questions?
Anybody else have a question?
So I'm going to ask another question.
Please.
In the Ketubah, my parents says that my father gave like Chai Meot Duros. Duros, you ever heard what kind of money was Duros?
Duos, D-U-O-S.
It's in Hebrew. It says Dalet Vav Resh Vav Samech.
Duros,
The Ketubah
duros,
is in
duros,
the Ketubah is in
Duros,
Hebrew.
Duros, D-U-R-O-S, Duros. Yes, that was a coin. That was the coin. Actually, we've been using that word until the euro became the currency in, so before the euro was the currency in Spain, this was in 2002, the currency was the peseta, and 5 pesetas were 1 duro. So the duros, it was the coin. I don't know the equivalence with silver, because actually were duros de plata, duros of silver, okay? But we've been using that. When I was born, I would use duros. Still, I would use the duros. Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay. I was always interested about Christopher Columbus. Is there a chance that he might have been Jewish?
Yes. There is a, let me go. Okay, 1 second. One second, because I want to show you some images, okay?
Okay.
¿Dónde está? 1 second. Moisés, música. Okay, 1 second. Let's see if. Okay. Okay. Columbus. The picture on top is the 4 trips that Columbus took. Okay, he went 4 times back and forth. Here at the bottom, we see names. These are the names that actually Columbus used at some of the places that he was finding. So, for example, in Jamaica, he called a place David Cove.
Can you share your
And in
screen?
Santo Domingo, he called a place Abraham Cove and Point
Are
of
you
Ice.
sharing your screen?
No, we don't see the screen.
I'm
by the
sorry, I'm
way.
sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you for telling me.
Okay, now I see it.
Okay, now you see the whole screen. So on top, we see the 4 trips of Columbus, right? We went back and forth 4 times. And then at the bottom, we see some names. Jamaica. In Jamaica, there is a place that he called David Cove. In Santo Domingo, there is a place that he called Abraham Cove, and another place he called the Point of Isaac. In the island of Grenada, he called the place Mount Sinai. And in Guadeloupe, there's a place called Solomon Cape. So all these names are from the Old Testament. And this is quite strange that he was using names from the Old Testament to all these places. But even more important, this picture I have here is a letter. This is one of the letters that he sent to his son. He had 2 sons, actually, from 2 different women. And he sent a letter to his son. And 13 letters are mentioned. We only have, at least we have those 13 letters today kept in the archives. And in 12 out of the 13 letters that he sent to his son, there is this image, this writing on top of the letter. At some point, some people want to see here a Beth and a hay. Okay. I don't know if this is a Beth hay or not, but it is quite important to find out that, as I mentioned, there is this manuscript, this text written in 12 out of the 13. And why in one of the letters this is missing? Actually, this letter is the one that is intended to be shown to the king. So at the end of this letter, that there is nothing written on top, Columbus is saying to his son, please pass on this letter to the king. So why writing this in 12 letters for his son, and in one letter that was to be intended to be to the king, he didn't write this? This could be also a little trace. Another element. So we have a deep knowledge of the Old Testament and using names. We have the writings in his letters. We also have the departure date. He was scheduled to leave Spain on the 2nd of August of 1492. Everything was ready to sail away on the 2nd of August of 1492. And as a last minute change, he decided to postpone the departure one day. And he left on the 3rd. And you may say, well, there is not a big difference. Instead of going on the 2nd, he went on the 3rd. However, when we look at the calendar of 1492, the 2nd of August of 1492 was Tisha B'Av. So the question that we wonder is, did he postpone the departure because it was Tisha B'Av? We don't know. This is also another circumstantial evidence. Besides, there is still a lot of mystery about his life. He never, ever gave much information about his origins. Still today, there is a big discussion about among scholars asking whether he was from Italy. Originally, he seems that he was from Italy, or this is what he said. He presented himself as born in Genoa, Italy. However, from the texts and the letters that we have from him, he doesn't know the Italian language well. He makes many mistakes when writing, so he doesn't write as a native Italian. Therefore, the question is, if he shows very little knowledge of Italian and the type of text that he uses is not Italian, definitely not, why was he telling officially to everyone that he was from Italy? And even more, when he passed away, his son continued with this legend. So never, Columbus never provided much information about his origins, nor his son did. So the point is, why did he say that he was from Italy if it's almost clear that he was not? If he's lying, what is he trying to hide? Because you lie when you want to hide something, right? So there are very different elements that may let us think that if not Jewish himself, perhaps he was a converso. Another very interesting element is his testament. And his testament, at the very end, there are 8 different clauses. And in one of the clauses, he makes clear that half a silver coin must be given to a Jew that normally sits at the entrance of the Jewish quarter in Lisbon. So it's quite relevant that among all the monies that he gives away, say 1,000 duros to one certain person and 1,000 maravedis to another person, he makes clear that half a silver coin to be handed to a Jew. If you recall, Machasita shekel is exactly this, giving half a shekel, right? So if we put all these things together, because one by one, perhaps just coincidence, but if you put all of these things together, we may get the conclusion that if not Jewish himself, and again, I don't think that he was Jewish himself, he might have been a descendant of a conversion. However, there are some authors like Simon Wiesenthal, for example. His theory is that Columbus was Jewish. And actually the whole idea of going to the West Indies, because this is what Columbus wanted to do, it's all a way to find a land for the Jews. So if you read that book from Simon Wiesenthal, his theory is that Columbus was Jewish. So still 500 years after, we don't know. And the picture that I have here, these are the bones of Columbus that happen to be buried in Sevilla. Some DNA testing has been performed on these bones, but no relevant conclusions on this. So I'm sorry I didn't answer your question, because the question is, was he Jewish or not? And my answer is, he might have been.
Thank you. It's very interesting, and I enjoyed the whole presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I hope everybody
Thank you.
enjoyed. Thank you for taking time out of your day, Moises. That was amazing. Hopefully soon we could travel to Spain
Oh,
and visit in person.
that will be lovely. I'll be very happy to show you around, not only Sevilla, but all around